Part 1. The noise above the ceiling. It started one night in early spring, just as the last of the rain slid down the roof. I was lying in bed, not quite asleep when I heard it. 3 slow thumps, spaced far enough apart to make my skin creak. They came from above me. I live alone, in a single-story house with a small attic. It's not a space I go into often, just a place for holiday decorations and boxes I haven't opened in years. The only way up is a pull-down ladder in the hallway, right outside my bedroom. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. Maybe a branch had fallen. Maybe a raccoon had gotten in. I pulled the blanket tighter around me and listened. Another sound followed. Not a thump this time, but a drag. Something scraping lightly across the boards overhead. My breath caught. The attic has no floor, just beams with plywood laid over them. To drag something, you'd have to be careful not to fall through. You'd have to know how to move. I lay there, every muscle tense, staring at the ceiling. The scraping stopped. For a moment, I thought it was over, until a faint creak shifted from the center of the house toward the hallway. I didn't sleep. Every sound after that, every tick of the house settling, kept me frozen in place until morning light crept through the blinds. By daylight, the attic seemed harmless. Still. Silent. I told myself I'd imagined it. But as I walked into the hall to grab my keys, I noticed something above the ladder. A thin line of dust hung in the air, falling slowly from the edges of the hatch. Part 2. The dust that moved. The next evening, I came home late. The house was quiet, the air heavier than usual, like it had been sealed all day without moving. I dropped my bag on the counter and glanced toward the hallway. The attic hatch was closed, but as I stepped closer, I saw it again, dust drifting down in the dim light. Not a steady stream, but tiny bursts, like something had disturbed it from above. I froze under the hatch, staring up. The faint smell of dry wood and insulation hung in the air. I listened for any sound, but the house gave me nothing. I reached up and touched the pull cord. It was warm. Backing away, I grabbed a chair from the kitchen and set it under the hatch. My hands were damp, my fingers slipping on the metal latch. I told myself I'd just take a quick look, flash my phone's light up there, see nothing, and sleep easier. When I pushed the panel upward, the wood groaned softly. A wave of stale attic air rolled down over me. I shined my phone light into the darkness. The beam caught the usual mess, boxes, old suitcases, tangled cords. But in the far corner where the light barely reached, something was wrong. The dust on the plywood beams wasn't even. It was disturbed, dragged in long, uneven streaks, as though something had been moved across it. I lowered the panel and stepped off the chair, my pulse rattling in my ears. I didn't open it again. That night I woke to another sound. Not a thump or a drag this time. It was breathing. Slow, steady, right above my bed. Part 3, the shape at the ladder's edge. I didn't move. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, counting each slow inhale that didn't belong to me. The air in my bedroom felt colder, heavier, as though the weight above me was pressing it down. The breathing stopped. For a long moment there was nothing. Then came a soft, deliberate creak, directly above the attic hatch. I sat up, my heartbeat loud in my ears. From my bed I could see the faint outline of the hatch down the hall, lit by the dim nightlight I keep plugged in. The pull cord swayed gently, moving on its own. Another creak. The cord stopped swaying. I climbed out of bed and stood in the doorway, my bare feet rooted to the carpet. The space between me and the hatch felt longer than it should have, like the hallway had stretched. I took one slow step forward, then another. A sound like fabric shifting came from above, right at the edge of the hatch. I tilted my head just enough to look straight up. In the thin glow from the nightlight, I saw it, an outline. Not full, not clear, but enough to make sense of what I was looking at. A head. Shoulders. Someone crouched over the opening, their shape blotting out the attic darkness behind them. They didn't move. I took a step back. The outline tilted, just a small adjustment, as if following me. That's when the pull cord twitched. Not from a breeze, but from fingers. I turned and walked backward into my room, keeping my eyes on the hatch until I could close the door. I didn't sleep until the sun came up, and when I checked the hallway that morning, the hatch was shut tight. But there was something new, a single dusty footprint on the carpet below it. Part 1. The man in the last row. I was late leaving work that night, later than I should have been. The streets were mostly empty, and by the time I reached the bus stop, the city had gone quiet in that way it only does on weeknights. When the bus finally pulled up, I climbed aboard and noticed right away only 2 other passengers. A woman near the front, staring out the window, and a man all the way in the last row. He sat perfectly still, his head angled just enough that I couldn't see his face. His hands rested flat on his knees, fingers spread, not moving. I slid into a seat halfway down, close enough to see his outline in the reflection on the opposite window. The dim fluorescent lights overhead flickered now and then, and every time they did, I felt like his head had shifted slightly, angling toward me. The bus rumbled on. Stops came and went. The woman got off, leaving just me and him. That's when I noticed something strange. Every time the bus slowed for a stop, I could hear his breathing, but it wasn't steady. It matched the rhythm of mine, as if he was copying it. I told myself not to look. I kept my eyes fixed on the dark glass of the window, watching the blur of streetlights. When I finally glanced back, his head was turned. Not all the way, not enough to see his eyes, but enough to know for sure he was looking at me. The next stop wasn't mine, but I rang the bell anyway. When the doors hissed open, I stepped off without looking back. I walked fast, my pulse high, and when I turned the corner, I glanced over my shoulder. The bus was still there, idling. The man in the last row was standing now at the door, just watching me. Part 2. The stop that wasn't there. The next night, I decided to take an earlier bus. I told myself it was just coincidence, that the man from the night before had probably been harmless. But when the bus pulled up, the first thing I did was scan the back row. Empty. I took my usual seat near the middle, exhaling a little too quickly, trying to convince myself that I was fine. The ride was uneventful for the first few stops. People got on, people got off. The city lights blurred past, and the low hum of the engine settled me into a half daze. Then the bus turned onto a street I didn't recognize. I leaned toward the window. There were no storefronts, no houses, just tall, unlit buildings and a stretch of road that seemed to go on forever. I looked up toward the driver, but his face was hidden in shadow from my angle. When the bus slowed, it wasn't at a marked stop. There was no sign, no shelter, just a patch of cracked asphalt under a flickering streetlight. The doors opened with their usual hiss. I expected no one to be there, but a man stepped aboard. Same posture, same slow movements, his head tilted just enough to keep his face hidden. Without glancing at me, he walked straight to the last row and sat down. The doors closed. The bus pulled away. My hands tightened on the strap of my bag. I thought about moving closer to the front, but I didn't want to draw attention to myself. I kept still, listening. It didn't take long for the breathing to start again. Slow, matched to mine. I decided then I wasn't riding all the way home with him behind me. I reached up, pressed the bell, and prepared to step off. But when the bus slowed and the doors opened, I froze. We were in the same unmarked stop, the same cracked asphalt, the same flickering light. Part 3. The passenger who stayed behind. I hesitated at the open doors, staring out at the cracked asphalt under the flickering light. The air outside looked still, heavy, like the space between breaths. The driver didn't look at me, didn't say a word, just kept one hand on the lever, waiting. I stepped down onto the pavement. The doors hissed shut behind me, and the bus pulled away without a sound. For a second, I was alone, until I saw it. Through the back window, the man in the last row was still sitting there. He hadn't moved, hadn't turned his head, but I could feel his gaze on me as the bus rolled farther down the road. The sound of its engine faded, replaced by silence so thick I could hear my own pulse. I turned in a slow circle. There was nothing here. No cars, no people, no buildings with lights on. Just the hum of the lone streetlight overhead. I started walking, picking a direction at random. The cracked asphalt gave way to rough gravel, then to dirt. I kept moving, hoping to find a main road. A sound broke the quiet. Footsteps. They were soft at first, measured, matching mine. I stopped. They stopped. I turned, nothing but the empty stretch of road disappearing into dark. I told myself to keep going, faster now. But the footsteps came again, this time closing the gap. I didn't look back until I reached an intersection. Under another weak pool of light, a shape stood just far enough away that I couldn't make out its face. It didn't move. I turned down the side street and didn't stop until I saw a cluster of lit windows in the distance. By the time I reached them, the shape was gone. I never saw the man on the bus again. But sometimes, when I walk past a streetlight late at night, I get the feeling someone is still sitting in that last row, waiting for me to get back on. Part 1. The reflection that lagged. The motel was the kind of place you only stay in when you don't have another option. Faded sign, buzzing neon, a front desk clerk who barely looked up when I checked in. I'd been driving for hours and needed to crash somewhere before continuing the next morning. The room smelled faintly of old carpet and cleaning chemicals. The bed was lumpy, the curtains thin, but I didn't care. I just wanted to sleep. There was a mirror on the wall opposite the bed, tall, with a frame that looked like it had once been gold, but was now dulled and flaking. I caught my reflection as I tossed my bag onto the chair. For a moment I thought nothing of it. But as I turned away, I noticed something. My reflection didn't turn right away. It was quick, less than a second, but enough to make me freeze. I stood there facing the mirror directly, moving my hands slowly side to side. The reflection followed perfectly this time. I told myself I was tired. My eyes were playing tricks. I avoided looking at the mirror as I got ready for bed, focusing on the dull hum of the air conditioner. I turned off the lamp and lay down, but the mirror was still in my line of sight in the dark, catching the faint glow from the parking lot outside. At some point, I drifted into a light sleep, until a sound woke me. It was faint, like the gentle tap of a fingernail against glass. I looked toward the mirror. My reflection was sitting up in bed, but I hadn't moved. Part 2. The knock from inside the glass. I went completely still, my eyes fixed on the mirror. The room was dim, lit only by the pale spill of the parking lot lights through the curtains. In the glass, my reflection sat upright, head slightly tilted. Its eyes seemed darker, sharper than mine, though the distance made it hard to tell. I reached up, touching my face. In the mirror, the reflection's hand didn't move. The tap came again, 3 soft knocks spaced evenly, as if someone was on the other side of the glass trying to get my attention. I swung my legs over the bed and stood, my heartbeat loud in the quiet. The reflection moved this time, slowly mirroring me, but with a slight delay that made my skin crawl. I stepped closer. The knocks stopped. For a moment, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Then, from deep within the glass, like a sound coming through water, came a muffled scrape. The reflection leaned forward. I didn't. Every instinct told me to leave the room, but my feet stayed planted. I took one more step until I was right in front of the mirror, just inches away. My reflection smiled. It was small, subtle, but wrong, like it had been waiting for me to get close. The air around me felt colder, pressing against my skin. I took a step back. The reflection didn't. I grabbed my bag, my keys, everything I could reach without looking away. Then I turned, headed straight for the door, and yanked it open. From the hallway, I glanced back one last time. The mirror was empty. Part 3. The face in my place. I didn't go far, just down the hall to the vending machine alcove, where the hum of the soda cooler drowned out the sound of my pulse. I told myself I was being ridiculous. Just tired, maybe dehydrated. I opened a bottle of water, drank half in one go, and leaned against the cold wall. When I finally worked up the nerve to go back, the hallway seemed longer than before. The thin carpet muffled my steps, and each door I passed looked the same. I slid my keycard into the lock, pushed the door open, and froze. The mirror faced me directly from across the room. I wasn't in it. The reflection showed the room exactly as it was. Same bedspread, same open curtains, but in my place stood something else. It looked like me, but wrong in ways I couldn't name. The skin was pale, almost grey, the eyes a fraction too wide, the smile too steady. It raised its hand in a slow wave. My stomach dropped. I stepped backward into the hallway, keeping my eyes locked on the figure. It didn't move from its spot. It just watched, head tilting slightly, smile never breaking. The light from the parking lot flickered through the curtains, and for a moment its shadow on the wall stretched too far, like it didn't belong to the shape casting it. I shut the door hard, heart hammering, and didn't go back in. I took my keys straight to the front desk and asked for a different room. The clerk didn't ask questions, just slid a new key across the counter like it wasn't the first time someone had asked. That night, in the new room, there was no mirror. But every time I blinked, I saw that wave, that smile, and the feeling that the thing in the glass had been waiting, not to be seen, but to take my place.